In this video, I'll be going over a complete Nightreign guide I made over 4 months. This guide is targeted towards newer or casual players, but I still go into advanced topics with the meta, as well as important numbers for not getting one-shot and concepts that Def 5 players aren't really aware of. I'll be skipping over a lot because I covered a lot of these topics in depth already in the following 4 videos, which are over here. Video number 1 being this video right now. The intent of this guide is to be a bang for your buck shorter version of this full guide, so you can enjoy the game without watching me. A lot of it is text based, but I still go into a few clips. I go into like Reddit comments, so that will make the video at least less boring and less of me just scrolling through this entire thing and rereading it. And sometimes I might pause a bit because I have an outline for this video that I need to reference because there's just a bunch of stuff. Sometimes I think I sound a bit demeaning when making some of these guide videos, but I promise the main reason why I made this guide is because of Reddit threads where people were just asking for help, and I find that cute because they're gonna have a world of fun ahead of them for cinema. And quick note, if you end up liking this guide or want to share it with someone, this Google Sites link gets filtered out by Reddit due to a lot of phishing links. So you can just link this video or the Steam version of the guide if you like. Okay, now to actually get into the guide itself. So here's kind of an outline of what you can expect. So I'll go into a 4-part series for the guide, and these are going to be like guide videos you can watch. But again, you could just watch this one video and be fine. And then I'll go into Deep of Night scaling progression, all these topics, general skills to learn for trios, super important. Like what passes should you get to each Nightfarer. I'll go into routing, which is really, really important. And I think new players need the most help with this rather than boss mechanics. But boss mechanics are still super important. But routing is not really easy to learn. Then I'll go into relics, and I label them as 10 to 20% importance. Some clickbait here, and we'll go into that. Okay, and then there's also an extra section with my stats and stuff. Okay, so the introduction, the 2 concepts I want you to think about for this entire guide and for Nightreign is you get items with good routing, you understand opportunity costs, and then you dodge and hit and punish the boss and boss me. Notice how the 2 ideas do not include relics. And I just go into that. I don't care about specialized builds. You can run whatever you want. As long as you hit the boss frequently and you don't die, you should be pretty good. And I want to note that much of the knowledge obtained in this guide was from other randoms that I played with, reading Reddit, watching videos, taking feedback from comments, and even hate comments. The rest was observing all of my runs and watching other players. And I also provided clips um, for whenever I reference something in this guide. So if you do like Control F, you can do parentheses clip number 1, and it'll bring you to that clip. Okay, so this video is just this video, and again, the intention would be a shorter video that covers everything. And the purpose of this video is bringing clarity to like the numbers because players like me are gonna retire, and there's always going to be newer players or casual players. So number 2 is a pre-DLC with a lot of boss mechanics in it. Number 3 is more like a concept video of how you really master the game, and I'll go into a bit on that. And number 4 is my like depth 5 win streak with Wilder, 70 win streak with bid relics, and the end of that was a pathing mistake. So you can see how important routing and pathing is. Okay, so now to the first section, Deep of Night scale and depth progression. So you'll see this chart here. You can reference for how much damage the bosses will do versus the base game. Things to note is the Blood Evergale HP scaling, the Night Lords only having 2 times their base game HP at depth 5, and then depth 4 being Hell. You especially want to look at this section right here. If D3 is plus 92% damage, but D4 is plus 183% damage. So that's like 2.83x. That's a lot of damage. And that's a huge jump. So that's kind of that's the purpose of this chart. And here's credit for the table. There's a bunch of numbers in there. Okay. Now, so the really important parts, I think probably the most important section, or the one that people still don't understand at depth 5 is how do you not get one shot? And I'm going to start with depth 4 and 5 as a reference, but I will include references or some estimates for depth 1 and 3. So the number of times I got one shot at depth 5 with 1355 HP was 0 out of 70 in that video above. If you have your routing, well, if you do good routing and you understand the damage that bosses do and how much negation you need, you never have to worry about getting one shot, especially as a melee. And the game just doesn't really help you with that, so that's the purpose of having guides. And that's why a lot of people don't even know the real number, and you can get the real numbers, but I won't go into that. So as a general guideline, at depth 5, you need 1,200 HP, not really vigor, but same thing, plus 40% damage negation. Why? Because if you look at the chart above, the bosses do 3.31x their base damage at depth 5, and here are the Nightfarers that are close to that number. And on average, depth 5 Nightlords will do 1,500 damage on average per attack. But like certain ultimates can go up to like 2,000, 2,500. That's just an estimate. There's more to that. So if you have 40% damage negation at full HP, a boss will do 1,200 damage on your ultimate. So you can survive pretty much everything. So because of that, should the low HP Nightfarers or casters range always go class cannon? Not necessarily. It really depends on your preference and how you want to play. If you choose a hybrid build as a caster and you only get 1,000 HP and plus 40% negation, that still might be enough. Because 1 out of 20 of those games in depth 5, I would get one shot and not find enough passes or damage negation to survive all the one shots. If you don't wear any Vigor, Revenant at level 15 has 760 HP, and even if you have a plus 40% and a plus 32%, and the boss does an ultimate, you'll die, because it does 816 damage, as an estimate. And even if you are a glass cannon, it doesn't mean it's completely useless to have any damage negation, because on average, bosses do 1,500 damage, because it depends on the type of attack they do, so light or medium. So having one will go a long way. And then here's just some estimates. The depth 3 is where you start getting one shot, so be careful there. And for depth 1 and 2, I just recommend defeating enemies Phil's Arcade, which I'll go into later. So how much damage should I have at depth 4 and 5? So hybrid builds, I recommend going at least plus 40%. Class cannon, 60 to 100%, but there's relic RNG. And one thing to note, as we go into the next section, that alt damage sources are pretty much multiplicative, not additive. So the more you stack, the more damage you would do. However, multiplicative does not mean exponential. So you do get more damage, but it's not going to I don't know if go off the charts is the right word, but you'll see there. And I want you to remember there are very many variables that contribute to DPS, like how often you punish the boss, if someone dies, etc. So is 1.4x damage too low for depth 5? I would say no, because you get a lot of your damage from the expedition itself. So let me just check here if I want to pull up that video clip. All right. Well, actually, I just want to talk a little bit about the damage negation first before I move on to doing damage. So to break up the video a bit, I want to show you that with enough damage negation at depth 5, you can actually learn boss fights from you can actually learn boss fights at depth 5, which is what I was doing here. So as you can see, okay, so Worm gets aggro to me, whatever. What you can do to kind of estimate how much damage negation you need is when you get hits with damage negation, you can see how much of your HP bar got reduced and kind of just estimate how much negation you had, and that's how you extract the boss damage. Of course, there's probably some data mining way of doing it. You can get the number yourself by counting the pixels, probably, whatever. But I just wanted to show that even at depth 5, I'm still learning here because I have damage negation. And that's why I always prefer the hybrid build. Because you'll see in the timestamps, I mess up the worm aggro twice, but I don't get one shot. But then at 4840, because I was taking the worm aggro all the time, I do end up no-hitting the worm. And here's what I hate the most. That attack I hate, but and then, so all the future games I play with whatever character, I have a general idea of how to survive the worm and take aggro. And that can really change a run. So I think I will keep that there. So that's the important part of damage negation and how all these numbers come into play. Okay, so now we'll go to actual damage. So I mentioned here real quickly, but one Everdark Balancer at depth 5 trios has about 3,200 HP. And a lot of people think that you need to go full glass cannon, you need to kill them as fast as possible. But actually, it could be a bad thing potentially, because if you kill them too quickly, another Everdark Balancer from the pack that you run away from could come and you can have 3 Balancers aggroed on you instead of 1 or 2. It can help, like, burst a bunch of them, especially if you have AoE with Beast Claw. But also, if you don't have enough negation to survive one straight hit, you could lose. And that's just a trade-off you have to think about. So anyway, this is just a quick, like, idea of where your damage damage comes from. So a Charged Lightning Spear at purple, level 15, is around 450 damage. With my hybrid build, I will do about 1,400 damage after all the multipliers. But I only have 1.4x damage. How did I get to 1,167? Well, because the expedition. So you get 4 item passives. So I'm assuming I'm taking 2 damage negation here. That's generous. And then some more dormant powers. This is a really small amount, 3 of them. And then eventually it brings that 450 to around 1,400. So relics are plus 40%, expedition plus 65. So let's do another example with Heolstor and Walder and Duchess. Halo Scythe. Purple Halo Scythe does 320 base damage level 15. And then if you start with like 1.78x from the Balancer's relics and like affinities up, you can have your relics do like 78%, and you can get like plus 93% because the improved skill attack power can go to plus 21%. So that's kind of how you scale your damage. You can actually hit 3,000, 4,000 easier without even 1.78x if you have Mirai, Grafted Blade, Traces of a Given Lord from killing Margits, Libra's Bone Plating, especially if you have more runes, you do more damage. And that's present in the Clip Farms. Because everything's multiplicative, second damage is everything, right? Not necessarily. So there are multiple factors that contribute to the damage in the boss fight that people don't think about. Some people think it's obvious, but it's not. So you need to think about your team damage. If someone goes down, the damage your team will be doing will not be like 100% uptime. It'll be like 10% because you're trying to revive someone. So you might have 3,000 DPS and then go 0 DPS for 20, 30 seconds. And how frequently you hit the boss. Damage is damage per second. A lot of games you have to consider like the animation time, cast time. In Nightreign, it's the punish windows as well. So if you're playing more cautiously because you're glass cannon, you might be attacking a little bit less than someone who's doing a hybrid build. And then utility often gets overlooked because expedition itself can actually be hard, and especially if you're a newer player, defeating enemies, fills Arc Gauge, and ultimate effects can help with that by providing you with other stuff besides the aim. So when you're thinking about damage, the actual damage you deal to a boss or contribute is that you might be the Wilder doing 25% of the total damage, and the Recluse does 40%. However, in order for the Recluse to do 40%, you have to take aggro so that the Recluse doesn't get one-shot, sniped, whatever, and can actually spam their spells. And if someone dies, your fight extends, like I mentioned earlier, and the Recluse might only do 20% of their damage, while the Wilder does 45%. He's always alive. If you understand your boss mechanics and you never get down, then yeah, glass cannon, go ahead. You can speed run the bosses. The more damage you do, the faster the fight goes. But it's also a trade-off. So you'll see in a lot of my videos, I just have a general build because I want to use like whatever I get. I might only do 1,000 per cast, but I don't get one shot, and that's enough for me to pick up my teammates if I need to with Revenant's Ultimate or Wilder. Whereas a lot of people like to play with like 2,000, 3,000 damage, but you might get one shot most of the time. But they could end fights quicker. So that's just a trade-off. And especially when you're learning, I do personally recommend hybrid, and I never switched off of it since playing this game, just because I don't like getting one shot. You can definitely bring it all the way to depth 5 and carry. However, the thing with hybrid builds or Vigor builds in particular is that if you don't punish the boss more than someone who's doing a glass cannon, then yeah, you could end up being a worse contributor than a glass cannon. Especially if you're not taking aggro too. But in general, getting down is super punishing if you have a Vigor build, and if I see a hybrid build at depth 5, I know they're pretty decent most of the time. So I'm new, I don't have any relics, depth 1 to 4. Well, that's fine because a lot of people will answer like, "What's your build?" when you're asking for help. But once you have like the core 6 useful lines, you got 50% out of the 20% impact that relics do on your runs. And I will go into that in depth in the very last section, at section 5. Okay, so now that we've gone over the numbers real quickly, let me check my outline here, see if I missed anything. I guess I do kind of want to show maybe some of the DPS where I don't have any damage ups. So let's see if I can find that. So this is like an example of the team damage. So keep this in mind, and then let's watch the team damage. 1.5 from the Wilder, 600 from the Undertaker, 700 from me, 700 again from me, 1.4k, 700 again, 2.1k, 700 again, 2.8k. I get aggro. Okay, so we'll watch here. The Undertaker doesn't know how to deal with this attack, so she's just spamming dodge. But if you notice, okay, so yeah, if you paid attention, you're not really supposed to use Stars of Ruin as Revenant, and I have Incant Relics, but I do have Night Invader and like a Mariah Greatsword with a few stacks. But because I was spamming cast, my DPS was actually pretty high compared to this fight, and I might be the Recluse in this fight even without those damage ups, while the Undertaker and Wilder were struggling a bit. So that's just an example of like, if you run a hybrid Vigor build, make sure you punish the boss aggressive. So yeah, just wanted to cover that real quickly before I move on to the progression. So the first thing I want to mention about progression, and especially if you're getting stuck, so this is some advice for you. A lot of experienced players, when they're giving advice about getting unstuck, is forgetting the context of what you as a newer player or casual player knows and how they can perform compared to the experienced players. So experienced players might automatically default to relics, but as a newer casual players, there's so many more things you need to worry about besides the relics, and relics won't be stopping you. So for example, when Deep of Night got released, many of us, including me, have like 100, 200 hours in the base game in Deep of Night before playing. Sorry, in the base game before playing Deep of Night. So you, or as a casual or newer player, you don't have that prior experience, so it's harder for you to maybe utilize glass cannons when you're getting one shot and you don't have enough playtime or experience with the boss. But we already dealt with that with 100, 200 hours and came in with that experience, so it's easier for us to run glass cannon builds and burst down the boss. As a newer player, you might jump in with only 20 hours of experience, and I would do that too. So that's why I'm not really obsessed with relics, and I recommend hybrid builds starting out. And then depth 4, you can think about it a little bit more. And yeah, more routing, boss mechanics can work with anything. So at depth 1, the only thing I really keep in mind is get familiar with red mobs and how important items are and the passives that come with them. And ideas to keep in mind, you get an item from killing a red trash mob, which is potentially really good to drop damage negation at full HP. And then defeating enemies fills arc gauge. There's certain relics that come with this. And what this will do is help you with clearing difficult red mobs and POIs, reviving, and people. This is the number one relic effect that I recommend, because it just lets you skip a lot of the BS or difficulty in an expedition. Okay, at depth 2, I think in consoles, I think people from consoles get this a lot. But there's a high chance you get a quit it potentially. Yeah, so I don't know. The best way to explain how to deal with this is that this is not like this is a genuine thing. Like this is a genuine benefits of having a quit. So this headline right here, solos and duos, is actually potentially easier than trios, and it's because of the relative scaling with poise. So, like, let's say you have 2 skilled players and 1 newbie in a trio. They might clear the boss slower than 2 experienced players in 1 duo. So, like, certain games, I might kill depth 5 Mars, base Mars, in 1 minute, whereas if I had the same players, but with trios, it might take 3 or 4 minutes. But that doesn't mean duos and solos is necessarily easier because of the increase in boss and trash mob aggro. Can't just distract the boss while someone revives. But this is a really good opportunity to really understand how to dodge like the expedition bosses and even the trash mob attacks like Crucible Knight and how to get your damage in. And also have like additional clip where defeating enemies fills Arcage helps deal with someone who disconnects. Okay, so at depth 3, this is a good stopping point for a lot of casuals and pretty much the game mode where everyone considers it's like a fair enough difficulty. So this is a really good stopping point for casual players, and it's a game mode where I'll be comfortable running like Colossal Sword Revenant with random. This is where you start getting one shot, so certain like Vigor and damage negation will help. And this is a good opportunity to learn. And this is the last chance you get for learning boss mechanics in particular and having room to fail. But as you saw earlier, if you do understand like the numbers enough and you run like a hybrid build, you can still survive at depth 5 and learn bosses. Penalties are super tough, but that's fine. So depth 4 is notoriously hell, and I suffered like months ago when I was trying to get out of it with randoms because it will punish you. Why? Because of all of these reasons, but as I mentioned earlier with the charts, the damage spike from the bosses jumps significantly versus the other depths. In order to survive getting now, you need like 1 damage negation at full HP and a little bit more vigor or negation. And obviously the penalty for losing at day 1 is minus 600, Night Lords minus 400, regular wins plus 200. If you don't understand like the meta numbers like in this guide, and if you don't help your teammates, the runs will become that more difficult. And it's notoriously harder because a lot of other players that you play with will not know that either. And that's because the game doesn't really tell you anything. It just says go, classic FromSoft. So that's why depth 5 is considered a little bit easier, whereas depth 4 is hell because there's that jump. But depth 5 already got used to that depth 4 hell. So if you get stuck here, I would think of it like a crucible, because you're gonna learn to be able to pull way above your weight here, and it's extremely difficult. You're kind of forced to. But that doesn't mean your randoms are going to be completely useless. You have to recommend, even though this is a solo climbing guide, one of the major things that you can change in a run is leading the pathing and sharing items for your teammate. Because they too can contribute to the boss. You're all stuck in depth 4. So it's really painful to lose in this depth. But if you like challenges, I'd still recommend pushing it. Because it'll make you prepared for depth 5. And like I said, depth 3 is a good stopping point because I have a lot of casual friends who played till like 60, 100 hours, and then they stopped playing, they got their fill. For depth 5, this is more of a warning, not a diss at your skill level, depending on how much time you spent. So for a newer player, you might be wondering, is it worth pushing depth 5, 9999? To make it to depth 5 for the first time, I wouldn't expect anyone without at least 300, 400 hours of playtime to reach you. And if you have more, that's fine. This is more of a warning. And depending on whether you found useful guides, you might not have the knowledge for it. And I want to make sure that if you're going to depth 5, that you still understand you can still make mistakes at depth 5. And it's not always easy. And I'll just go into more penalties there. So now that I've covered progression a bit, I actually want to go back to duos and solos a bit. The reason why I want to go back is because of this Reddit thread. So in this Reddit thread, I like these kind of threads, by the way. I think I mentioned that I find them cute. So base game easy, duo of night too hard. Plays duo with my wife. I've been playing for games, but I've never been super sweaty. Don't do NG plus. I also just did 100 hours of Elden Ring without summons. That's about it. Blah blah blah. We ranked out a few times. We always get smacked right down. Can't blame online random, straight up skill issue. So people will weight things like 30% relic build. I would shoot that down 10 to 20%. There's some other creators like Puff Dragon that still makes content. And then I want to highlight that a lot of people are going to be like relics at like the bottom. Where is it? Mostly about relics. I really highly disagree, especially if you're struggling at depth 1 or 2. But just keep that in mind. The reason why I want to highlight this in particular in duos and versus trios is that because they don't play with randoms, they will never be able to learn from other players like I did. And that's fine, but that means you're going to struggle a lot and you're going to get stuck if you don't like reference a guide or do a lot of experimentation. So to demonstrate, I want to show you me extreme carrying a duo. Well, I'm not going to show you that. I'm just going to show you where I spread the knowledge. But basically, this duo, for some context, wanted to spam Everjails. They skip castles, so we don't have any items in this video. I dropped them less likely to be targeted, like 2 or 3 times. We had multiple copies of it, but they didn't bring it to them, and it's Everdark Libra. And if these guys were playing duo, they would never learn what's happening right here. This is where the knowledge transfer happens, and this is where I learned a lot of stuff. I kept spam pinging in this video this item and dropping it for them. And because they played with a random, which is me, they're going to look at this item and maybe be like, oh, maybe we should have taken this so we don't die like a bazillion times and while I solo the boss for 60 minutes. So this is one of the ways you can get stuck in Deep of Nights is if you play with your pre-made, you might not learn from random. So this is where a guide will help you out or just watching other content creators. And this is one thing I really love about the game, the knowledge transfer and how quick knowledge spreads and learning from random. You never know what someone else might know. And this is at depth 5, by the way. So yeah. So let me check my outline real quick and make sure I covered everything I wanted to in this. Nope, I think that's it. So yeah, and beyond depth 5, you can do stuff like aura farming. Okay, so section number 2. General skills to learn for trios. This section is important for item sharing and kind of pathing for us to trio specific skills. So the number 1 thing in this list is know what item and passives your teammates look for and share them. To know that, check the relics. If you don't help your teammates get what they need, they might become useless in fights and they might drop your team DPS significantly more than any relic or item will give you. So even like I said, even though it's a solo farm or a farming guide, you have to be able to help your teammates if you want the best chance of win. I mean, that's obvious, right? But like passing one item to them could really make a difference. Because if you don't give them the extra damage negation at full HP, they might get one shot, they might do 0 DPS while you try to revive them. That's just one example. And just think about other examples, maybe one to highlights. As a newer player, you might not know, but when a Revenant drops a claw, you can use it as another Nightfarer for faster revives. like really fast revives, and I could show you. There's an example here. Number 2 is aggro switching. So you have to be prepared at all times for the boss to switch aggro, especially when you're doing heavy hits, a lot of DPS, and that changes based on who has less likely to be targeted. And even with less likely to be targeted, Fulghor might do like a 180 snipe to shoot the iron. Reviving one down player, there's certain things you might want to think about when reviving one down player, like boss aggro. And then you have more examples about reviving teammates while dodging the boss. And a lot of characters have something to do with revives with their ultimates, especially. And number 5 is turn off camera lock off. So you can keep an eye on the boss, you can revive your teammates, you can dodge while reviving them. And a lot of people will think about team comps. Yes, it can make a difference, but I would just say that if you have a particular Nightfarer you like playing, play them. Because character mastery matters a lot. And before Revenant could start with Beast Claw and starting spells, I just used whatever I got, and it's still winnable. You can even do like off meta builds like Dagger Duchess with Vigor. But if you want to do a Dagger Duchess as Vigor, you better be good at punish windows. Else you'll grief your team a bit. And I did cover like randoms griefing disconnecting and really learn from the duo opportunity. And I just have an example where we make it with like terrible items because of disconnects, and we still beat that 5 Everdark Adel if you want to see that. And then another general tip is a lot of boss attacks have lingering AoEs, especially Everdark Gladius and stuff like that. So kind of to follow up on number 1, we're going to cover what items should you give to each Nightfarer. I already covered that. Balancers, blah, 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 skill damage. So I created a list of kind of the damage negation priorities you should share with each Nightfarer. I'm just going to cover one, which is successive attacks negate damage for Wilder. Can easily be triggered with 2 claw shots or power stance or dual wheel jump attack. And that's enough for him to survive at depth 5. And there's also some like extra like precision upon aiming for RNI. That's a damage item. Another key thing to note is that taking damage boosts damage negation, extreme priority for Raider. Because Raider is all about taking damage, and you can still use it well at depth 5. Every time you get hit, you get damage negation after you get hit for the next attack. And Raider can actually do a lot of damage without many damage ups, doing a Vigor build. Because of certain passes like these. Guardian has a lot of different ones, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, you can go through that list if you want. So the very first clip in my guide is just like a full run with live commentary. And I think, let's see. It's easier. I don't know why this got so, actually I kind of do know why it got popular, but anyway. In the timestamps, I have listed everything I thought about or think about in a run in regards to pathing. So I'll go into pathing a bit more later, but this is just like a general idea of everything that you can do to get like damage negation, sharing items, increase your damage, where to get items, when to do Everjails and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a signature run or like the primary example run. And I also have bad gameplay because I was doing a live voiceover and people were roasting me. So I did eventually make post commentary videos. But that just goes to show, even with bad gameplay, if you have the fundamentals down, you can make runs easy. So, yeah, so these clips help out with demonstrating the concepts above for the general skills. And I won't go into them now. Save time. Okay, so I'm going to take a break here, and I'll just cut the video and be right back. Okay, I'm back from the break, and we'll go a bit into routing. So routing is really associated with general skills and item sharing. So the one thing that I want you to keep in mind is everything you do in the game takes time, no matter how easy the POI is. And there is like the point of interest, like a camp. there's an opportunity cost, not just with time, but the amount of items you can get from that POI. And I want you to know, this section is kind of not bolded, but this is actually a really important section, which is a circle time limitation. Everything you do takes time, right? But Depth 5 players still struggle with optimal routing, and there's an opportunity cost every time you choose a POI. So the end of my 70 win streak was, I think, first circle we starts closing. I think it was actually this the very first time here, 4 minutes and 30. I tried to fight like a Redditor Revenant when we didn't have enough items before the first circle started closing, and we already spent 2 minutes or 3 minutes of the day doing other stuff, and we had to disconnect, and that ended up being a terrible decision, and we had barely anything to deal with the night 1 boss. So, as you play, keep like an internal timer of how much time you have left, and whether you can clear that POI inside. Because even I still mess up after 1,000 hours. There is a general formula you can apply, and you don't necessarily have to reach level 15. Like level 13 is enough to beat the boss, because 14 to 15 doesn't give you that many stats. But if you're not ending at 15 almost every game with extra runes, then you can improve your routing. So every time you clear POI, think about whether it was worth your time in rewards. So hot spots, the number 1 POI in the game will be Night Invaders, and you only get one of them at depth 1 to 3, sometimes 2 at 3, and then 4 to 5 you have a high chance of getting 6. Focus, so that's why Castle is also another. These are like the 2 primary POIs that you need to worry about, because one is in the middle of the map, one is randomly selected in 1 or 2 locations in the map, whereas every other POI is available in all parts of the map. And they have really good item opportunity. So for the general formula itself, I have some example videos. So for clip number 1, I timestamped everything about using the formula, and I think it's, don't check which one it is. As you can see, I referenced this earlier. The pathing explained as well. Where I could have done Everjails, the Night Invaders. The formula is applied there in every one of my games. So what is the core formula? Oh, and I also have formulas for solo runs and duo runs in case you're interested in those. Because not having a third player makes it a little bit difficult, and you do have to adjust slightly. Okay, so what is the actual formula? So what should you do? Day 1, you clear the base camp, you get level 2. Just so you can have stats so you can deal with level 3. I don't know if I include defeating enemies Phil's art gauge here, but defeating enemies Phil's art gauge lets you blow up level 3 really quickly after you kill some mobs in the base camp or some trash mobs. Now, this is kind of like a min-max thing, but the next thing you want to do is a Night Invader camp if accessible by bird. What do I mean? The Night Invader camp is the number 1 or most important POI in Deep of Night, and the most rewarding for your time, usually, if things go right. If it's accessible by bird, the time you spent traveling there is going to be worth the rewards. The only time where it really isn't worth doing the Night Invader immediately after level 3 is if it's like complete opposite, like let's say you're right here and then the Night Invader is on the top right on the map. You don't want to go all the way to the top right, even with the bird. But sometimes you can do a bird from here to here. And if it's a difficult one, like a Marsh or a Red Knight main camp, you could go to clear another POI, any other POI, and get to level 5 first before doing that. Or save it for day 2. Once you reach level 5, 7, you can take a peek at the castle basement boss. If it's a really easy one and it's not a red one, you can go clear it. A lot of people like to clear it early. But if it is a difficult one, you can just skip to number 5, which is clearing the dormant powers from the Banished Knights, the Trolls, Crucible Knights at level 9 to 12. You can actually, honestly, it's kind of better to do this before you even do the basement boss a lot of times, but some people like the basement boss, and the top castle boss has a high chance of giving you your Nightfarer's like Dormant discovers power, the default one, or whatever you're equipping. So it usually gives you good loot. But yeah, if you clear these mini bosses, you can actually get a ton more runes and items and powers and passives besides fighting the basement boss right away. So a lot of times what I'll do is just skip the basement boss or after I clear step 5. Um, After you clear castle, you might not be able to clear the entire thing. You can go for any POI. So any red POIs and Everjails are good after you do castle at the end of day 1. And if you need less likely to be targeted, this is a really unique or hidden tech. Not really hidden tech, but like one that people don't think about is you should target ruins and campsites if you're looking for less likely to be targeted as well, because they have a lot of item opportunities from the chests you open. So let's say there are 3 chests next to each other at castle or the ruins. You get 3 to 4 items from just 2 seconds of button presses versus fighting a whole boss for 1 item. What do I do if the castle is cut off by the circle? Well, you could just clear like pretty much any red POIs. Like every POI except for Everjails increase significantly in the value you get from them because they have chests, the red items, double passives, blah blah blah. Again, I don't know why I didn't put defeating enemies fills Arcade here, but defeating enemies fills Arcade is gonna help you ease the difficulty of all these POIs. I think I do include it in the videos, but oh, I do have it here. For the night 1 boss. Okay, so what do you do after you clear castle? You clear the first Night Invader camp nearby. At day 2, your number 1 priority after killing the night 1 boss, if you're at depth 3, 4, 5, is to target the second or leftover Night Invader camps. Why? Because you're limited on time for the circle, and the Night Invader camp could get cut off. The Night Invader camp in particular is the number 1 POI in rewards, time, runes, items, damage negation, and it could get cut off. Whereas other POIs, this is opportunity costs, like Everjails and bosses, they're all around the map. In the map, there's 3 Everjails, 2 Everjails in each section where the circle will be, but the Night Invaders are always random every game on where they're selected. So the number 1 priority is to clear them first, so you don't get cut off. And then after you finish your Night Invaders and castle, you're pretty flexible. You can finish the castle like the rooftop boss, which has a high chance of giving your dormant power or a dormant weapon. Any POI with red mobs, campsites are still good here. Ruins are still good here, especially if they're on the way, especially if you need more items. So in Deeper Nights, red trash mobs are super valuable. And in mid game, you could just delete groups of red trash mobs for a bunch of items. And then there's Night 2. So I do go into more detail on this core formula in particular, just like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, most people are just going to need the general formula. So that's the formula for the base map. What's the formula for the shifting earth? So I do have an example for Noklateo only. For the shifting earth, it's still worth doing the Night Invaders. Most of the things the only thing that really changes is your day 2 pathing. And I recommend doing the shifting earths over more Everjails or outside bosses because the circle is going to force you there. Base map's not going to have as good of like POIs to use, especially in Noklateo. There's no castle. So at the start of day 2, if it's Noklateo, I'll go into that later. You'll beeline for it. But at day 2, you don't really want to spend that much time on the base map, but you can if you're trying to wrap up things like Night Invaders and then head to the POI. And these are just general guides, interactables. You can get legendary items from looting specific bodies and stuff like that. And then here's a video again here's a video for routing for Noklateo if you want to watch that. And then here is a map of how to do Crater. So, like I said, day 2, you could go for this church. You could go kill these 2 bosses. There's a lot of flexibility, but this is like a general path. You can skip this church, take this bird, and come back later at step number 4. I don't know why my control. But number 4, you could go back to the church if you need to clear these bosses. But yeah. So this is a general route that you can use. And then after for mountaintops, also another day to kind of beeline thing. And the one thing to note is that the mountaintop ice dragon gives you a guaranteed yellow item. You could also just skip the buff entirely and fight it if you're low on time. You don't have to do it, but I mean it's a free legendary and it's a lot of runes and stuff like that. And there's also some min-max stuff. You could go north here to the Giant Crows, Semi-Human Masters, and then route back if you finish the dragon early. Okay, I have that Noklateo video, which is the very first video. And I think one trap that newer players, or a lot of players, casual players, miss is that after you kill the Night 1 boss, there is literally nothing you could do. There's there's nothing better than to just beeline to the POI after killing Night 1 boss. Why? Because of items and the passive you'll get and the density of these bosses in this area. So, like, if you kill Adel, everyone gets a Wending Grace revive. If you go kill Adel and you go to the weapon duplication, you get a second damage negation at full HP. There's no castle for you to get any items. If you do 2 Everjails or a Great Red Boss outside of this area, I mean, you're not going to have as much loot density, and the circle is going to push you, and you're going to waste time traveling. The circle is going to end around here on day 2. So you don't want to be like running and doing low value POIs when there's so much value from the revive at Noklateo and the duplication ult. So you can duplicate damage negation at full HP. You have a high chance of getting legendaries, which a lot of them have a lot of DPS increases. You don't need that 5, 10, 15% damage from the Everjail because that's going to cost you time. That's the opportunity cost. Especially if you want to get less likely target for Everdark Libra, you duplicate that for your teammate. So it's way better for you to just kit yourself out with the amount of items you get and the density of these bosses and duplicate important passives than to do other stuff on the map. So there's that for Noklateo. And for Rotted Woods, again, you can actually clear a bit of castle on day 2. Especially if it gets cut off or something like that. And then after you finish up castle, you don't want to spend too much time there. You could just head straight towards the woods. Don't really want to spend time clearing great bosses outside the woods because you're going to have enough bosses in the Scarlet Wood to deal with. And the key thing to note is that you usually want to find the favor of Rotted Woods, the buff, by process of elimination. So while you're clearing bosses, depending where you enter, you want to check this general area. If you see a glow, if you don't see it, then you want to just head towards this area. Don't see the glow? Okay, I know it's going to be here. So you don't have to go to the castle and waste time traveling there. You can clear bosses while you check the buff. And if the buff happens to be where you entered, you just save a bunch of time already. You never have to check these other 2 areas. So that's what people will commonly do. Process of elimination there. Okay, so Great Hollows. This is new. The only thing you should really think about in Great Hollows is that the double castle meta. What is double castle meta? Why is it important? Because in the base game, you can do divine towers at level 10, so those big towers are 3 bosses. They're not worth doing in Deep of Night because they're so tanky for some reason with the scaling, and they're a time trap. They don't give you many items passives, and those items of passives are not guaranteed to be good. So, but in Deep of Night, when you kill red trash mobs, when you kill a bunch of red mini bosses, of which there are a gazillion of them in the Great Hollows, especially in the double castles, in the north and south castles, even without Everjails now, you're going to be able to find so many good items and passives that it doesn't even matter. Because items and passives were always the most important thing. So in general, as a guide, day 1, clear any nearby easy POIs for like level 5, 7, mini bosses, and then look for crystal spawns to unlock the great crystals. Hopefully you do that fast enough so you can clear some of the easy castle mini bosses. Don't fight the Divine Beasts or Clean Rot Knights too early, because they can burn a lot of time. Target the things like the Blood Omens, the Banished Knights, because those could be red and they give you an item. and that item could be red as well. And there's like a talisman chest. And then after day 2, after night 1, after you kill a night 1 boss, for day 2, I recommend beelining for the North Castle no matter what. Why? Because you already cleared the valuable POIs on day 1 from the South Castle, hopefully, and you've extracted some value out of South Castle day 1. But you've extracted no value off the North Castle. So the North Castle can be cut off by the day 2 circle sometimes. So you want to extract as much value as you can out of the North Castle before the circle starts closing. And usually you don't want to do the North Castle first. You can, because they usually have like slightly more difficult bosses in the South Castle. And I explained it in depth there. Night Invaders are sometimes worth doing, but you can actually skip the Night Invaders. But I would still recommend doing them if they're easily accessible and if you all have the relic. Sometimes I do skip them entirely because I'd just rather get more loot from the double castle. So this is a double castle. The padding's not perfect, but maybe it being scrappy is helpful because not everyone's going to do everything perfectly like everyone in Depth 5 does. And then here's how to deal with the top spawn, so with the lobsters in church. Defeating enemies fills your arcade will help you out here with the lobsters. And that's pretty much it for the routing. I want to check my outline here, see if I didn't have any clips to mix up. I guess I could just like reference where's that? This again. For more routing depth. So yeah, that's pretty much it for routing. Next is the boss mechanic. So the reason why I covered routing first this time around is because I feel like most people asking for help need help with routing, but boss mechanics are super important as well. The one thing I want you to think about, because a lot of people will skip this section because it's boring and it's obvious you got to know boss mechanics, right? But what's not obvious is that learning specific ones, which a lot of people skip, can really change a run. And that's why I'm going to highlight like 1 or 2 specific boss mechanics that can change a run in this next section instead of covering all of them. So I highlight that. So a lot of people are going to skip this section, but I really want you to keep in mind that not knowing one boss mechanic can really make a difference. And because I've talked so much in the routing, I will show you what that looks like. Let's see. Got here, and I think I wanted to cover kind of correlates with the general skills section. So 2120. Here's an example of someone who does not know their boss mechanics even at depth 5. And this is one specific boss mechanic that can ruin a run. But it's actually super easy to dodge, and I'll let you see. I think you get the point now. So I noticed that Undertaker didn't know how to dodge, so I was playing a little bit more cautiously. The Wilder didn't expect Undertaker to die, so he got caught. Okay. So besides the damage stuff I discussed earlier, why I highlight this in particular is because Fulghor is considered one of the easiest bosses, but a lot of people at Depth 5 didn't do their diligence, and they have no idea how to deal with Fulghor's 10-hit attack. But if you spend like 30 seconds learning how to dodge Fulghor's 10-hit attack, which is why this was also in the above section with general skills, you can trivialize it. So here's an example where I do dodge it. That's it. That's all you have to do. Just 2 dodges, and it's kind of just 1 dodge, and you spam the second dodge after. There's a third part, which is surge sprinting away, which I'll go into later, but if the Undertaker knew that, the Wilder probably wouldn't have gotten straight hits. I wouldn't have to go for a solo revive. I wouldn't have to pop my ult. So even at depth 5, people were skipping like super important ones like this, like Fulghor's 10-hit attack. But once you learn this, that you have to dodge the initial hits, and then just dodge again 1 more time, and then surge sprint away, you can just avoid the 10-hit attack, like just like that. And that's what I mean by like knowing all the mechanics as much as possible is going to save you run. So just some suggestions. Because I've talked a lot, I do want to show some different things. One of the videos I used was, this is Chris Crass. I used a lot of his boss attack breakdown video. I highly recommend. But one of the special tips you might not see in other guides is that I want to show how looking at the frame collider data for boss attacks can help you learn this game. I don't know if people consider this cheating, but if you don't like cheating, then you skip this part. But I don't use like Boss Arena or anything like that, and I find these videos interesting. I was going to watch them anyway. But this is one way if you're struggling to learn how to deal with Everdark Gladius' timing. You can see the actual colliders in this video. And what you want to do is you want to iframe when these colliders reach your character. So let's say right here, it's not going to explode until it's not going to hit you or damage you until it reaches at this point. But it does go really quickly. But
between the flame trails extending out,
you can see the collider going all the way to you.
Jump.
So the second is like the timing is like 1 second or hundreds of milliseconds, but understanding that some of these colliders have travel time could really help you with these tricky boss attacks. So that's just one example of how frame data can help you. And then here's a quick boss resistance chart. This is update for DLC, so notice the phase changes. I'm not going to go deep into detail, but one of the things as a newer player that this game just hides from you is that it tells you that Libra is weak to madness, which is fire. But Libra does holy damage, and if you do holy damage to him, you get 35% more damage if you use holy weapons on it. 20% from madness and fire. So that's the key thing I want you to realize with this boss chart. And you can look a bit more to that. You don't have to follow it to a T. You can still use Shattering Crystal on Animus, for example. Doesn't have any resistances. You can even use it on Caligo, but that's just like a general of how you can use that. Okay. So I'm gonna double check frame data, covered that. So I'm gonna go to the actual bosses now, and it's gonna be 1 or 2 tips. So number 1 unknown, not commonly known tip is that Animus, after casting her orbital laser attack, actually just stays in the ground for a bit, and you can damage her for 15 seconds for free. Animus itself. So if you have a lot of high hitting or frequently hitting attacks like Shattering Crystal, you can burst like 20, 30%, 50% of Animus's HP after the orbital laser attack. And you can dodge Gnoster's Enhanced Rain with regular sprints. I show that there. And yeah, I'm not going to cover other stuff I've already covered. So yeah, so there's more tips in general of how to deal with that for Gnoster. But key thing there, damage window after the orbital laser attack. And also, some of these videos don't have an accompanying video for the normal version just because I kind of burnt out at this point. And I feel like a lot of the normal bosses don't really need help and they get covered in the Everdark. But I do still include a text if you're interested or struggling. And you can watch someone else like Chris Grass. Okay, anyway, Everdark Libra. One thing you need to know as a newer player, especially, and even as a Def 5 player, spamming Everjails and not knowing, less likely to be targeted will absolutely change or cheese Everdark Libra. And you can solo carry with that. And I have some example runs. And everyone should get at least +9. +6 can still help, but +9 is that break points where the condemned give up on chasing. They will still chase you if you're trying to revive someone, or if there's not enough aggros being shared, but eventually if you run away, they'll give up on you. I think that's the key. They'll give up on you with +9. So now you can just hit Libra, and Libra has a smaller moveset. So the key thing to keep in mind is when you're routing, like, do you want a lot of item opportunities so you have the best chance? Like going to campsites, opening chests, covered in the padding section to get this fast. And I have more tips. Defeating enemies fills art gauge actually helps you out here, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I covered this section earlier, but you can learn to extreme carry. You don't need insane relics. I got hate comments from my damage, but Discus of Lights, do not sleep on Discus of Lights. It's like the best counter to Everdark Libra, and it only does 200 base damage, but you can increase it to 400 per tick, which is 800 per cast, and 1,300. You could make it 600, blah, blah, blah. What do you do without less likely to be targeted? Well, I covered that with a 3-step plan. You can look at that if you want. But get less likely to be targeted if you can, and for your teammate. Not much to say about normal Libra, except be careful on dodging before getting hit enhanced. And I don't know why I didn't put that you can cancel Libra's bubble with a lot of ultimates, but maybe I'll fix that later. Okay, so Everdark Mars. The one thing I want you to keep in mind for Everdark Mars is that when Everdark Mars starts sending the exploding water balls or jellyfish at you, you can do a light attack with a Storm Ruler skill that you get from killing Augur or whatever, the first phase one. Pick it up, because it's the only way you can damage Everdark Mars. But I want you to keep in mind that you can use the light attack version of the Storm Ruler skill, and no matter where the bombs are around you, even after they land on the ground, if you cast a light attack, it will wipe them out. So, what does this mean? It means you can avoid getting hit by exploding water balls completely alone, without the help of attacks from your teammate. So, and just remember that you have limited FP and stamina when casting them, and I cover that in clip number 15, where the Wilder at that time carries me. So that's the one thing I want you to remember for Everdark Mars, is that you can actually survive all of the exploding jellyfish or water bomb balls by yourself. Normal Mars, you can kill the suicide jellyfish bombs this time, and it does a lot of poison damage to Mars, especially with duos or solos. Especially if you're melee, you can do a lot of damage that way. So Everdark Gladius, I have a lot more advice on him because he's really tricky and he does a ton of damage compared to everyone else. But I did cover the AoE attack earlier with the Collider video, so that's the only thing I would really recommend. Oh, and Everdark Gladius has a phase transition with torpedo clones. The way to do that specifically in trios is something that you're not really going to learn until you play a lot. But this is one of the last things I learned at Depth 5. The best way to do it is just to spread out from everyone, like around the edge of the arena. Obviously, you don't want to be in the middle so you don't get crossfired by someone else or aggro switching after your teammate dies. You can regular sprint to avoid the first 2 torpedoes and surge sprint to dodge the last burst, I guess, or third one. You can iframe dodge them, but I just recommend surge sprinting the last. And I have examples there. For normal Gladius, I actually have a video where it's just me messing around with ornamental straight swords, and I only have Incant Relics. Obviously, I still have that Distance of Light just in case, but just to showcase, like, once you have an understanding of the numbers, which I covered earlier, you can just do whatever you want. So yeah, that's why that's there. So Everdark Caligo. Obviously, if you're new, canceling the Exploding Frost Shard ultimates, where it applies frost to everyone and you can't dodge. Well, you can dodge with ultimates iframes, but anyway. You want to cancel that if you're one of the classes that have a stance cancel. But actually, my number one tip is to not worry about team comp that much. The most effective way to actually deal with this fight is not necessarily damage, it's just applying a ton of fire. Why? Because fire breaks Caligo's armor. I mean, Caligo is also weak to fire, so you get a damage boost from that. But the more fire you apply, it will do more damage to Caligo's armor versus other elements. And when you break Caligo's armor, it stance breaks. It does a ton of damage and chunks her. So yeah, my number one tip for Everdark Caligo, if you're struggling, is apply a lot of fire. Even if you're Recluse, it'll help your team a lot. For normal Caligo, just stand under her legs. There are invisible ice shards that spawn. It can trigger taking damage. To dodge her breath attacks, dodge into the breath as soon as you're touching the air. Takes a bit getting used. Okay, so for Heolstor, a lot of people consider him a free win, but people struggle with him. And I think the reason why there's a gap, because a lot of us had nothing to do before Deep of Night, so we practice Heolstor a lot because he's just the final boss and he's cool. I would just pay attention to aggro switching. And for the map AoE, there's a safe spot, but just adjust your timing. He has a similar hitbox to Gladius's frame. Um, Sometimes he targets someone up close, and you might get hit by his actual slam. It's a tip for Heolstor. So I also say like you should use solo runs, but how do you do a solo runs? I'll cover that later. For learning bosses. Okay, so Fulghor. I love Fulghor as an example because, as you saw earlier, overconfidence can kill a Fulghor run, even though he's considered one of the easiest bosses. And I highlighted, I'll go over again, but dodging the 10 hit combo, you get close to him, dodge the initial swing, and then you just spam dodge for the second dodge to dodge the rest of the attacks, and then you search your away. And that's it. It's, if you think about it, it's only really one dodge. You just dodge the initial swing. And the reason why I don't say he's a free win, because a while ago I had like a 19 win streak on my Revenants. I panicked even though I knew all the mechanics. We were all ready to fight, and then it would just end just like that. So I don't like my guy Fulghor being disrespected because he's end my win streak twice already. But now I know better to not be overcome. Normal Fulghor, not too much. There's some tricky stuff with his lightning, with his charge attack, cancel with lightning, and ghoul arm attack. For Adel, also, I don't consider any bosses really a free win except for normal Adel, but Everdark Adel can be tough. He looks scarier than he actually is. My best recommendation is like for the lightning AoE chomp, best to dodge twice into it. I recommend fighting away from the hill because he'll always go there and cast a tornado. And you can jump to dodge the ground explode. And you can see with like bad items, we still beat that 5 Everdark Adel as a duo. Yeah, not much damage. Okay. So normal Adel, yeah, not too much there. I find it pretty easy, but there's some other tricks. And here's a bonus routing formula at the end. Unfortunately, no voiceover or the full run, but we do through 3 Everdrills here. I use Scarlet Rots. We do burst down normal Adel. We have normal relics. Okay, relics and a Vigor Raider. And he did a great job. Okay, now to the DLC part. So for balancers, I want to start with the Everdark balancers. Key things here is if you permanently kite balancers away, you keep running after you kill one, you only have to deal with 2, maybe 3 at a time. I did cover earlier in the number section. But if you kill them too quickly, you might get a 3rd balancer, so just be careful of that. It's probably going to happen because a lot of people like to stack damage. After you kite the balancers by running away and killing 1 or 2 at a time, and you know the moveset so you don't get destroyed, that's my tip for that. I'm actually going to go a little bit more in depth to the DLC because I haven't covered them before. Or, well, in my other guide. So with the worm, one of the ways you can increase the success rate of your runs if you can take worm aggro. It's a little bit more complicated and it's scary because of his slither. But there are actually ways to deal with worm aggro, even with Revenant stamina, limited stamina. You could watch some of my videos if you want. But the things I want you to take away from this guide is that the worm does have a straight charge attack, and the way to dodge it is surge sprint. One of the skills you need to learn is to identify the straight charge attack versus the slither. Because you can't easily dodge the slither with just surge sprint left or right. So most of the time you do want to keep running away from the worm. If the worm does a slither and you want to try and dodge it, he does this figure 8 pattern. When he heads towards you, what you want to do is you want to, so like the physical number here, you want to go inside these 2 holes that the number 8 has. So he's going to slither around, and if you go into the tiny hole, you can kind of avoid the slither itself. There are more tricks to avoid it, but that's my general tip if you're not trying to do anything complicated. And it is kind of hard visually. So if you're Wilder or if you have enough damage negation, if you take worm aggro, you can really change the run. And as you can see in some of these videos, I'm literally learning how to do that at depth 5 because I have enough negation with my hybrid build. Um, and yeah, when he does that flower attack, just run. At depth 5, it's just too much. I have tanked it once, but it just requires a lot. Okay, so normal balancers. There are two rules in normal balancers. One is to hold the aggro from the lead Valkyrie and focus staying alive. The other is your teammates will kill the regular balancers. And one thing to keep in mind is that you do have to know how to deal with the aggro as a lead Valkyrie, no matter what Nightfarer you are. Because for some reason, I think the aggro is... I think she locks on aggro to someone until you do enough damage for her to want to teleport away and aggro someone else. So, for example, if you're Revenant with aggro, you can't just have the Wilder come over and take aggro, because it'll keep locking on the Revenant until the aggro kills more mobs. I think that's something I noticed in my fights. I'm not 100% sure. Well, those are the two rules. And because you have to learn how to deal with the lead Valkyrie, it's important to know how to deal with the movesets of all three Valkyrie types. So running away for the hammer, dodging to the side for the spear stabs, and the halberd just running far away. That will also help you a bit because the Everdark balancers have specific attacks. I've saved a few runs by knowing the moveset of the weapon. So those are the two rules there. To dodge the AoE transition attack, I do dodge it a few times at depth 5. Some other guys are not really helpful with it. The key thing to note is that the initial dash from the balancer does not do any damage from you. In order to actually dodge the dash from the transition attack, you have to dodge the hitbox of the explosion, which occurs slightly after they charge through you. So you can dodge a lot of them by regular sprinting, but for the final attack, you can dodge from surge sprinting, or you can use this technique I've always been using, which is waiting like from muscle memory about like a couple hundred milliseconds after they dashed, and when the actual explosion happens, for the shockwave. So you can dodge it, you can surge sprint, you can just regular sprint away from most of them. But a lot of people said it's undodgeable. It is dodgeable. I literally dodged it in this video. Uh, so yeah, you can dodge the explosion after the dash. So for the Dreglord, I would just recommend watching a boss moveset video. There's so many punish and revive windows, even though he's scary, even though his Scarlet Rot debuff makes damage station at full HP risky, or ruins it sometimes. But like, for example, he has a multi-hit attack, you dodge with one roll, and you never have to really do anything doing it. The other key thing is, I don't know why I didn't bold this, but I want to highlight this phase transition, which is responsible for a lot of deaths. At the very end, he does like a map explosion with 2 slams. You actually want to dodge slightly after when he slams it, the sound cue, each time. It's just something you just gotta learn, but it's really tricky. There's like a triple ground pound. You can jump the waves on the slam, but after the third slam, you know, dodge away. Here's a little more fun video where I get some hate comments about doing Revenants, not taking enough aggro as Revenants, even though Wilder's supposed to do it. But I do take more here to kind of disprove that I can if I want to. But as a Revenant with Discs of Light, I'm probably trying not to get aggro. Okay. So in this section, I'll be going over Night 1 bosses and the common wipe mechanics. I'm gonna skip through most of these. You can read them if you're struggling with specific ones. And I have updates for the DLC. The one thing I want to take away from this section is that, especially for the Night 1 bosses, defeating enemies Phyllis or Gauge are going to help you a lot with some of these. And it's going to help you have your ultimate for some of these instead of even ones where there aren't many trash mobs. So for the Great Red Bear, which is probably the hardest Night 1 boss, the best way to counter it is with good routing. So hopefully you have good enough routing so you can deal with it, because it keeps scaling in damage. In general, you can attack him from behind, you can do bleed as a ground slam, which can be jump. Oh shoot. Okay, well I just have to use my outline. Accidentally hit the back button. I could use a break anyway from talking. Yeah, not too much go into detail here. There's modes with his red spears. If you're new, you gotta kill the red spears, also do damage in an AoE area. And apparently they can ruin your run. Like, let's say you kill Moog and there's still red spears on the field, it's still gonna activate after he dies. So the fight is not over until these spears are gone. But you can proc bleed and stuff. He's resistant to a lot of things, but melee still work. You can still hit him even though he's resistant to certain things with that damage and do damage. Okay, so that pretty much covers it for Night 1 date. Night 2 bosses, don't discount them because they can be difficult. Okay, so the next thing I want to cover, this is due to some feedback someone left me, and I thought it was a great section to add. I say in some of my videos that you should do solo runs to learn boss mechanics and deal with aggro. But I don't actually show you how to do the solo run, so I added this section here. This is an example, and this is one of my favorite parts of Nightreign, is I really love the balancers fight. There's something cinema about being a tiny doll with a giant sword in like a heaven fighting 7 heavenly beings. But anyway, here's a solo run example of what you can do to learn the normal balancers. And here I'm tanking a lot of damage with taking damage boost, damage negation. You'll also see pathing or routing. I always go with rotted woods, shifting earth, because it gives you HP, so you can tank more. And the pathing is really simple. So for Revenant in particular, or solos in particular, you have less time POIs to work with, but the enemy HP is relatively low. But the aggro is going to be all on you. So I skip a lot of fights with the Wraith Calling Bell, and then eventually when I get a good enough Colossal Sword, I can 1v1 the bosses because they have low HP, even as Colossal Sword Revenant, because I understand my damage windows. So this is where it's really going to test you. Solo runs will really test you on damage windows, but once you understand that and you can take aggro, you can actually, solo is actually easier sometimes than trio. So yeah, if you need a guide for how to path and learn normal bosses with solo pathing, I recommend spawning Scarlet Woods, Rotted Woods, and you can copy this video if you want. Okay, so that covers it for the bosses. Now I'll go into the relics. So the first thing I want you to know about relics is I do weight them as 10 to 20% importance. When I say they're not that important, I mean like I want to show you what that means. And I have one relic effect that I've been mentioning a lot, which is defeating enemies fills art gate. And I put mandatory in quotes because it's more of a clickbait thing. It's just that good over other lines that it deserves a special mention, and a lot of people don't understand its value. So that's why it's mandatory. They'll use it at depth 5. It's a god roll line. The reason why I point this out is because a lot of newer players or casuals or other people will recommend doing like stacking damage. But for me, 12% damage for this line, the trade is not worth it. I mean, this line is, what in other words, this line is potentially more than a 24% damage line because of the utility it provides you during the day. It's debatable at 24%, but you can get 24% in a lot of different ways. You cannot get the utility that this provides, and we'll go into that. And especially as a beginner, you're going to want to have this because it doesn't require a lot of RNG. And from my experience, 12% is not worth the utility to give. And like I said, it's quote unquote mandatory. You can win without it, but you'll feel naked without it. And potentially your pace of the expedition is going to become slower. If you don't have it. You can always get more damage from the expedition, but you can't find this insane utility. Why? I list a bunch of reasons here. Key things to note is that it makes your expedition easier so you can save time. You can reduce the difficulty of red mobs, red bosses. 12% damage can help you. More damage can help you with that. But especially in early game, it can't help you like this. It can't stagger iframe, help with revives. I mean, damage can help you cheese Night Invaders, but ultimates help you cheese the Night Invaders early. It lets you clear groups of mobs. It lets you cheese bosses by staggering them, stunning them, all of that. It's kind of like a survivability. If you have a bad start, one of the ways my 70 win streak could have been saved is if my teammates had this relic line, but that wasn't the main issue I lost, so I didn't include that. But you'll see that in the video. And by cheesing the expedition, you get more loot and passives. The less you die, the more passives you get, the more damage and survivability you will have for the Nightfall. So defeating enemies, those are Arc Gauge, only helps you with 2 bosses, Everdark Libra and Dreglord. But the value it provides you during the expedition and the time it saves you can help you prepare for the Night Lord by getting a bunch of items and passives. And also, snowball effect's not the right word, but if your teammates have it, when you kill one mob anywhere in the map, no matter where you are, you're going to fill their ultimate. And pretty much everyone at depth 5 on PC have it in the build. Usually, if I see someone at depth 5, they're somewhat new, they don't have the fundamentals down, that's fine. They don't really understand the value, and that's why that's why I'm covering it so much in this guide. And I want to say again, you can win without it, but there's a lot of value, which I'm going to go into right now. So I'm not going to cover all of these, but like for example, pretty much everyone gets like stagger, AoE clearing, like let's say you're level 2 and you're trying to clear the Holy Church Oracles. You can charge your ult with trash mobs as well and blow up the entire POI and do 80% of the Oracle HP. And not worry about getting one shot because you have an iframe that does a ton of damage. And I want to say, I ran without the arc activation spreads fire in the area. But I honestly think this line is super underrated, and it comes with one of his Remembrance Relics, which is really good. It can help you with revives, and actually does a ton of damage from the flames. So this is a very niche use case, but if you get the lobster starts or the church start on the Great Hollows, your ultimate is super good at killing the red lobsters. So keep that in mind. Also, this is my personal gripe. If you're an Iron Eye that picks 12%, 10% more physical damage instead of defeating enemies those Arc Gauge on a relic, I'm gonna be mad at you because it's so good. There's so many. It's just so good for clearing groups of mobs. You kill red trash mobs, you get more loot. You stagger bosses, you revive teammates. Blah blah blah. So it combos with relics, other relics. The other thing I want to highlight is for Executor. So actually, if you look on paper, Executor's ultimate has the most benefits out of all these Nightfare. Previously, his dog didn't have that much HP, but they buffed it. And now it's the most broken. It's like clearly the most broken ultimate in the game. Staggering groups of mobs. Like you could just clear a whole camp by shouting. Uh like especially early game POIs. And one thing I forgot to mention is that you can use beating enemies fuels Arc Gauge to deal with the balancer raid, because balancer raid starts after the first circle starts close. So yeah, it's a really early game thing, but if you have your ultimate, you can cheese the balancers, you can fill the trash, you can fill your teammates' Arc Gauge from far away, even though you're all spread out. So yeah, if you look at all the benefits I listed out of Executor's ultimate, you'll really understand how busted it is. It's a free heal, you can use it for movement, you can revive 2 to 3 bars of your teammates. It's extremely tanky, even at depth 5 now. Kind of an iframe, AoE for clearing the mobs, multiple staggers. It's just busted. The other one I want to highlight for Recluse is back then people didn't understand the value of defeating enemies with Arc Gauge for Recluse. But I do demonstrate in I want to take a break from this text. I do demonstrate I think I do demonstrate. I think I do demonstrate like a good Recluse utilizing it somewhere in one of my videos. I don't remember what. Oh, I do cover the balance rate. Sorry, I'm gonna have to. I do want to mandatory. Nope. Okay, it's somewhere. Maybe I'll go check my Okay, but anyway, with Recluse, what it does, I'll just go real quickly, is that not only does it enable Recluse to spam her spells without regenerating FP, it lets your Duchess or Revenant spam their spells or your Balancers. It lets your team recover. So even though Recluse is one of the best classes to go Glass Canyon and not have utility, there are some crazy value you can get from having it, and it can clear trash mobs. I've just never had a Recluse. Every Recluse I've had with defeating enemies feels Arcage has been amazing, and it helps the team so much. There's one extremely underrated relic line that it combos with. Is Recluse when activating ultimate art. It raises your max HP by plus 50% now for 30 seconds, but actually it stays forever until you get hit. So your HP will still stay buff until you get hit. Plus 50% HP until you get hit. That's like a free freaking damage negation bubble. And it can make Recluse a lot tankier during the expedition or Nightlord fights. And you're going to get some damage with a Blood Loss. She has like a Remnant's Relic. And her AoE clearing does help a lot with that ultimates. Killing red trash mobs easier. It's actually kind of a bad iframe compared to everyone else. Because you can easily die after animation. But yeah. I don't know if I want to skip around too much. Because I wasn't prepared to show this, but I really wanted to show like a Recluse never having to waste cast time. Okay, maybe it'll come up later. But yeah, basically, you don't have to spend time regenerating FP, which wastes time on DPS during the expedition. If you have your ultimate, you can just spam Stars of Ruin like 20 times and kill Bellbang Hunter without ever having to regen FP. I showed that in one of my videos, but I don't remember which one. Sorry. Revenants. So one of the key things, I played Revenant for 778 expedition. I've never left without Ghost Flame. Well, when I do leave it, I miss it. It's kind of like a hidden benefits. I wonder if I go into that later. Yeah, I'll go into that later. But there's a hidden benefit to Ghost Flame Explosion. And there's just some more underrated stuff. I don't want to go into detail to save more time. Guardian Raider is still like a maybe. It's still pretty decent. There's still some pretty good ways to utilize it. So if you get it as a bonus line, not too bad. And remember, before... Wow, I started on the Relic section, but didn't go into Relics except for defeating enemies feels Arcade. But remember, as we go into the next section, and from the numbers above, damage, it hit the boss, times your damage you get from your past. That's super important because just because you get 10% damage doesn't mean the boss is going to end 10% faster. Blah, blah, blah. I think I say not to obsess over Invader or Everjail, but Invader is the meta. The real reason for low DPS in your run is probably because people are not punishing the boss quickly rather than the relic. Because 1.5, I've been using 1.4 forever at depth 5, and it's enough for me to solo carry. And it's actually 2x damage because you get damage from the expedition. Or your total damage is going to be 2x. But one person at 3 bars, like I covered earlier, will destroy your DPS. But of course, you still want to have the best effects you work with. And then I'll go, you don't need to cheat. You don't need to edit your relics. Personally, I hate playing with people with edited relics. If you want to do stuff offline, I don't care, but it does impact the other people you play with, and there are a lot of cheaters. For me, it's what's the point of trying to shoot 99999 if you think you need a crutch when you clearly don't? So that's my personal opinion. That's why it's only 10-20%, and that's why it's the last section. So I covered defeating enemies, shows Arcade already. I'm not going to go over that again, but Night Invader, depth 3 to 5, definitely want to have this because you don't even need this. It's just the POI is just so valuable. It is the most valuable POI for the passives that drop, like damage negation at full HP and skill damage ups. If you're a new player, you're not going to have it, so I wouldn't obsess with it until depth 4 at least. No big deal there. Balancer's Relic, if you double equip them, you get 48% damage, spamming melee skills, Astral Ward. The key thing to note is that the red balancer, I didn't cover this. The red balancer, like when you lose damage negation, it has a chance to give you immunity, which can save you a flask. That's why if you don't like double balancer, you could run just red balancer, which I do on my Wilder, because that hidden benefits of damage negation is really nice. So number 4, Knight of the Fathom, especially if you're a new player, you can wear this. It's still useful at depth 5. At depth 4 to 5, maybe only Vigor is probably not a good choice. At depth 3 is fine. And that's why I recommend that 1.4x damage. But yeah, until depth 3 is when you start getting one-shots, and if you have enough Vigor, you might not even need damage negation at full HP. Sometimes it can help with chip. So if you ever get increased maximum HP from your relic, your Deep of Night relic, that is like a god roll line in my eyes, because that's a lot of HP, and it's going to help you reach those breakpoints at depth 5. Plus 3 Vigor is not as exciting, but it's still helpful if you get them base relic. And yeah, Vigor is way more useful. No one, whenever someone asks for advice on Reddit, no one, and they're complaining about getting one shot, no one ever recommends Vigor for whatever reason. Everyone's like, just stack damage. But like, if you watch my videos, I've always been running this build because I just don't like getting one hits. And it helps me learn. It can be way more useful than you think. So that's why if you skip to this section for whatever reason, you should go back to the number section. Max FP, casters, nice. The more FP you have, the more you can spam. The general buff, affinities, incants up, sorceries up, they're all nice to have. This is like the last 5% of the 15% you get from having these main relics. Fine. If you want to do specialized builds, go ahead. However, we're like Halo Scythe, whatever, it doesn't matter. What I want, if you read this guide, what I want you to do is, I want you to think about what happens when I don't get Halo Scythe, because that's gonna happen. Can you use another Astral War, like Blade of Gold or stuff like that? Most importantly, what you need to know is just how to weave in attacks with all the different Astral Wars, especially when you don't get Halo Scythe, so you don't become useless. You can't aura farm if you fail without Halo Scythe. You can run anything, I don't care, just make sure you understand what you can do without it. And then I go into why Everjails is not meta anymore. I rarely see this line at depth 5. It still can be used as speedrun. It's still good. But Everjails are the worst POI for your time spent for you and your team in Deep of Nights. And there's not even an Everjail in the Great Hollows. And I go into all the reasons why. You still can do them end of day 1, day 2. Still good times. But honestly, I just would not recommend this line anymore. And a lot of people are going to do it depth 1 and 3, so maybe you might as well have it. Maybe that'll change. And then now I'm going to talk about relic effects that give you, like, you can see in the section I say the relics are 10 to 20% important. Well, the core 6 relic effects are going to be like 15 of that 20%. And it's not really obvious. And the reason why I put a core 6 is because you get 6 slots. And let's assume you only get 1 useful line. Because in my really old videos, I have terrible lines. You don't even need all 6 sometimes. And once you get those, you're going to have enough. And after that, I'm not going to worry about relics stopping me at depth 4 or 5. Because they won't be. So everyone can always use defeating enemies fills Arc Gauge, Dark Knight of Fathom if you don't have anything good. And I cover that in the number section. Nightvader is solid, depths 3 to 5. I explain why Everjails are not worth it. So I'll quickly go into some of these, but not all of them. So Wilder, plus 1 additional skill usage. It has a lot of chain effects, mobility, successive attack, negates damage, triggers, character and skill inflicts blood loss. Really good early game stuff there. Red balancers, the nullify, damage negation can save you sometimes. Art activation spreads fire in an area. I try to go without it, but honestly, I love it. I don't use it all the time, but I don't use it in a run all the time. Actually, no, that's false. I use it all the time, and it's amazing. Highly underrated. And then the Deep Knife Chalice. So Like, let's say you only have one relic line, you just equip this, you just equip this, and you just equip this. So partial restoration, defeating enemies fills Arcgauge. I like doubling up if you can. It's really fun. If you don't have defeating enemies fills Arcgauge on Iron On, I hate you. Because it's just that good. Plus the 1 additional skill helps with iframes and Iron On, mark application, reviving. You can skip this line as Duchess. Duchess doesn't actually need that much. So yeah, that's really... again, if you skip to this section, activating Ultimate Arch raises max HP 50% damage until you get hit. And all the wikis are wrong. It's so broken. And it chains with defeating enemies fills your Arcgauge for tanking it. Executor, defeating enemies fills Arcgauge. I explained above, but he has the best ultimate in the game now. Okay, so I'm going to go a bit into Ghost Flame Explosion. So with Revenants, Ghost Flame Explosion scales off magic damage and like the other damage drops like Night Invaders. But that's not actually why I use it a lot. It's really more of like a subtle effect, but what it lets me do is I can, as a Revenant, if I want to clear a POI or a group of mobs by myself because my teammates are too slow or whatever, I could just ult, and now all the enemies around me are just staggered, fell down, and now I can freely cast spells without dying in one shot or whatever. Especially useful for early game when Revenant has like nothing, if it, especially if you don't have DLC with a starting spell. So it's skippable, but honestly I really miss it without having it because I can do that. I can just solo groups of mobs by myself. I'm not sure if there's any Guardian. He's really relic heavy. You should probably watch it Guardian because like Guardian guide and not for me because a bad Guardian, it's very you have a high chance of getting a bad Guardian does not know how to utilize the Nightfarer as well. It can be good. Guardian can be really good, but most people just don't understand how to fully utilize it. As you can see, defeating enemies fills Arcade Turn and all of these. And then again, you can win without the effects, but finally a break from the guide. So I can go into why I have a clickbait here. And in here, we're going to get a disconnect like immediately in the game. And here I list out all the times I get a value out of our ultimates. The Revenant has her ultimate, no Ghost Flame, that's fine. But you can see that I used my ultimate to break the poise of the boss. If you remember in the earlier section that the bosses have relatively low poise scaling in duos, you can cheese a lot of these bosses, and we do get owned by the Belt-Bearing Hunter, but I keep breaking his poise and stuff like that with our ultimates. You can cheese POIs with the ultimates. Ult helps with Night Invaders. So yeah, this is like listing out all the value you get from the ultimate. If you don't have defeating enemies for this Arcade, you might only be able to do like 2 or 3 ults. So yeah, that's an extra video if you want to see the value of it, especially when you get duo. Especially when you're duo, and that's why it's ranked number 1. Here are some other Relic builds. I like Pike Analysis. I think he's taking a break right now, but he has some high quality videos. And that about does it. I feel like I'm missing something. Let me check my... Okay. Other resources for Relic Build. Okay, I do go into an extra section. I'm not going to cover this, but this is my final... This is kind of when I retired. 900 hours, 750 hours expeditions. 777 on Revenant. And even though I don't play a lot of the other characters for Nightfarers, I still watch what they do and watch other videos, so that's how I derive the guide. I could play them, I just don't want to. I did get tired of Revenant after 777. And here are my relics before DLC. They're really bad, so... And they're still kind of bad, except for one relic that I have. Yeah. Some closing thoughts. Nothing to go there. So I think that actually does it for the guide. I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like there's a video clip that I wanted to show. Oh, I think that's about it. I'm actually surprised I've been talking so much I don't even know how to... Okay, yeah. So what this section... The rest of this video is just going to be me like talking about moving forward, what I do, why I made this guide, and kind of my review on the game, and what's next. So you can skip this. This is not part of the guide. This is a bonus in case you're curious. Um, let's see. One of the reasons why I made this guide is because of Reddit questions like these. So honestly, I love these kind of questions. There's just something like innocent about this guy just wanting help because he's stuck on level 2, depth 2, doesn't know how to win consistently, and they're trying to figure out this game. And I love this game so much, and I think about all the things they have ahead of them to experience that are like cinematic and fun. So that's kind of one of the main reasons why I made this guide, is so that I don't have to go on Reddit answering questions anymore, or don't feel like it. So yeah, that's one of my main motivations. The other motivation is I wanted to grow some of my skills. Uh, you get a lot from putting yourself out there. Before I made these videos, I didn't have live commentary because I hated my voice. But now I've gotten used to it by recording these videos and hearing from other people. And sometimes I just forget that a lot of players just go on their own pace like this, or they're new to the game. And when you're a hardcore player, you don't really think about the advice you're giving and how that might not help them might be what they need. So yeah, that's kind of what I made this guide for, is in case you're a new player, you're trying to catch up to the meta, and there's not hardcore players to help you, you can have a reference and easily share, because there's no guide from FromSoft, and it's very vague. Um, yeah, it just kind of made sense for me to make this guide, even though I kind of burnt out. I'm really glad about all the skills I grow. Uh, I also wonder, like, 13 years from now, I'm using a guide from this game called Dragoness, which has like a classic version, like a rerun of the game. And I'm using some high quality guides that were made like 13 years ago. So I wonder if people 13 years from now, will they read this Nightreign guide? Um, maybe not, but that's just something I think about. So yeah, you kind of see that my format of my guide is like this. But I actually want to make a Google Docs. I just couldn't link any videos really well. So yeah, that's why it's not. And also this is a bonus, but I actually have no analytics set on this guide. I do see like my video views, obviously, but I kind of just wanted to keep the integrity. This is just like an aggregate. Like, I just want to keep the integrity of this guide to just be something that I made because I was passionate about the game and wanted to grow my own skills. So no analytics. I think it would have been nice. I really want to see how many people click the guide, but I think for the principle of it, moral, I don't know. I just want to keep this as like a free guide or whatever without any strings attached to it. Obviously, there's some strings because I wanted to grow my skills. Um, oh yeah, and one of the skills that you get from making content like this for the first time is that you get hate comments like these because gamers are like, because you're anonymous, whatever, it's the internet. Um, but you get used to hate comments like these. I used to get really annoyed at them, but now I'm like, yeah, whatever. And sometimes there's some value that you can, or criticism, feedback you can get from them, like real feedback, like a silver lining to their feedback. But sometimes you just get hate comments because you get hate comments. But I do respond to hate comments because they could be teaching opportunities. You might see that in some of my videos, or other people, not the hate commenters. Moving forward, I will be playing Duskbloods, but I won't be playing much Nightreign. I still like it. My favorite part was the balancers and hard carrying on Everdark Libra like these. I'm gonna love these videos forever, and that's kind of what I made my channel. And yeah, so in the future, I will be playing Duskbloods, and I'll make a few videos. I do have a Switch too. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much my motivations, why I made this guy for Nightreign. And the last part I want to go into is why I made or what my channel is. So you're gonna see here, and I've hidden the URL because I'm making a game. I just want to make a rhythm game. I really like rhythm games. As you can see, I've been working on it for 3 years on the side. I have a full-time job, but I wanted to grow a bunch of skills so I could become maybe a potential better game developer in the future and get used to hate comments. But you won't be seeing any of this for a few years because what's most important for me is that this looks good. I'm not sure about the gameplay yet. I won't know until it's done. But yeah, I don't really want to it's more of a low key thing, but I am working on this on the side. I might make a follow-up video on my channel being a personal archive in the future. And yeah, I don't really like people subscribing to me, so I until I have better content, and so I don't feel like I'm letting people down by posting random stuff because I'm gonna make this like a personal archive gaming video. But eventually, I will release videos like this, more guide stuff in towards making a game. But I don't know if I'm gonna be good. I don't know if the game's gonna be good. But maybe you'll see more of it in the future, and that's part of the motivations for me. So, if you read this or you watched this section, thanks for sticking with me. Again, I really love this game, even though I'm retiring and not playing that much. I hope this guide helps. I've definitely some of one of the things like I'm not. There's a lot of selfish motivations for making this guide, and I just wanted to let you know that I don't know why I'm getting so emotional about it. That sometimes doing something selfishly can really help a lot of others. And I don't really understand the weight of that, but when people leave comments like, "Hey, your guide helped me," and then when I see people leave comments and then surpass me later, that really hits the spot. That really feels nice. But it's kind of hard to understand. So even if you're doing things selfishly, you can really help out others, and it's like a win-win situation. So I guess that's kind of a random thing I wanted to. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope it helps, and maybe I'll see you in a future video.